Good morning and welcome everyone to another series, Table Talk. This is an initiative of the Government of the Virgin Islands to highlight the implementation of the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry report. So far, we have focused on greater transparency, continued accountability, effective communication and capacity building, inclusion as it relates to residency and belonger status, and value for money government projects. Today, we continue to promote this modern governance approach with a focus on enhanced safety and security. My name is Angela Burns, and today we are pleased to welcome His Excellency Governor John Rankin, CMG, and Deputy Governor Mr. David D. Archer, Jr. I have some questions, and we welcome questions from the viewing and listening audience, as well via Facebook chat or telephone number 468-2767, I do believe. Yes. So, Governor Rankin, let's jump right into the program today, and let's start with you, if I may. Briefly sum up this whole Commission of Inquiry process for us to give us a background and give us the latest update from your perspective as to how far we've come with the implementation of these recommendations.
Thank you, Angela. Let me say, first of all, I'm very glad to be here together with the Deputy Governor to address precisely the sort of questions you've just posed. People in the BVI saw the Commission of Inquiry process and saw what it looked into and investigated, where things haven't gone as well as they should have done within the territory. But what the Commission of Inquiry recommendations are about is about making sure that those things don't happen again, and that governance is better for people in BVI. And the recommendations are precisely about the points you mentioned in your introduction about better delivery of public services.
Yes.
Better value for money for people, better accessibility for services, better accountability of government. And if we can get that right by implementation of the recommendations of the COI, it can benefit everyone within the territory. And indeed, this was stated very clearly in the document which the BVI government agreed to, which says that delivering the COI recommendations will help to bring meaningful benefits, improved infrastructure, improved delivery of public services and justice for everybody. So that's what the COI is about, and that's what I'm determined to see delivered for people here in the BVI. In terms of where we are, my last report, quarterly report, was issued in September. I'll be producing another one at the end of this month, or certainly by the end of this month. And in September, 24 of the 48 recommendations have been implemented. Halfway there, but a long way to go if we're going to reach the deadline of May 2024 for implementation. So there's lots still to be done. We still don't have an Integrity in Public Life Act in force, a strengthened act in that area. We don't have a Whistleblower Act in force. We don't yet have a fully public register of interests. Some of the action plans from the reviews that have been carried out pursuant to the COI are still to come forward. So a lot of work to be done, and a lot of work to be done also in areas for which I'm responsible, including the field of law enforcement. So I'd be glad to talk more about those to you today. So much work to be done in which, I have my part, but I'm determined to work with the Premier and the government to make progress in these areas and make sure the recommendations are delivered.
Excellent. We want to get right into safety and security. That falls under your remit as governor. Can you go into a bit of detail for us, please, in terms of what exactly safety and security entails as far as your office is concerned?
Under the Constitution, I have responsibility for internal security within the territory, including for policing. So I specifically in that area work closely with the Commissioner of Police, and I also work with the Premier and the other members of the NSC, National Security Council, who include also the Premier, the Minister for Communications and Work, the Attorney General, and myself and the Premier, and we review strategy in relation to ensuring security and safety within the territory through the NSC. I also have responsibility for the prison, which I share together with the Minister for Health. And lastly, I have responsibility for external relations outside of the immediate Caribbean region. And so, for example, should, and we all pray not, another devastating hurricane affect this territory, it's the governor who's responsible for calling in assistance from the UK in terms of, as people will recall, the Royal Marines and the Royal Navy who came here and gave much needed assistance after Hurricane Irma. So those are my responsibilities under the Constitution, and working also with wider stakeholders.
Okay.
And as the Deputy Governor made clear in his own remarks the other day, to ensure that safety and security in tackling crime, for example, we also need the whole of the community to assist us in that area. Churches, community groups and individuals cooperating with the police, working with young people to help to prevent crime. So the safety and security of the territory is my number one priority. I don't shy away from my obligations in that respect. And again, I'm happy to say a bit more today about what I and the British government are doing to assist work in this area, and the wider law enforcement review which is taking place as part of the Commission of Inquiry recommendations.
Certainly, we will get into that. But I want to invite the Deputy Governor in now to talk to us about where does your office fit into all of this, especially as it relates to governance, national security, and the administration of the courts.
Thank you very much. Naturally, to get these things done, persons, individuals, public officers. So my office supports the governor's overall mandate, but in particular, being the de facto head of the public service, ensuring that the machinery can work, ensuring that we have the right resources through our people to deliver on what's necessary, in particular to the COI, whether or not we're equipped with the right policy functions, whether or not we have the right human resources capacity to ensure that that can take place. What does that mean? That means analyzing our current structures. It also means having dialogue about if we have the best and the right fit. It also means the current trend in conversation about whether or not compensation is sufficient enough to attract the right people. So removing all of the necessary hurdles so that collectively we can deliver on the mandates through the COI, deliver on the mandates of the government, but more so ensure that there's full and overall buy-in to ensure delivery.
And I suppose I'm now understanding where this whole public service transformation comes into play. Can you speak to that a bit, please?
Yeah, naturally, to effect any change as a result of a COI or regular business, you must always have a plan of continuous improvement.
Yes.
Therefore, transformation of the public service fits squarely within advancing government's business, ensuring the recommendations of a COI are properly effected. How do we do things such as deliver to the public with better pace? That comes from the technology. So one of the overall umbrellas for transformation is security. Yes. One of the overall umbrellas for transformation is digital transformation, e-government. How do we ensure that persons have a right and access to information through the right policies? So that's where transformation comes in. Transformation will serve as a continuous energy and a continuous source to make sure we're always able to adapt to changes where necessary.
Dealing with people, I am sure, is quite a mammoth task, and we'll probably get back to that if we have time at the end. But I want us to go into looking specifically now at some of the recommendations coming out of the Commission of Inquiry report. Governor Rankin, criminal activity, unfortunately, continues to rear its ugly head in our community, and questions have been raised about the ability or lack thereof of our law enforcement agencies to prevent, monitor, detect, and solve crime. What agencies are we talking about here, first of all, and what is being done to review and enhance the work of these agencies?
Well, first, let me recognize what you said in your question, that, events in recent months have been concerning for everybody in the territory. Too many young people have lost their lives.
Yeah.
And we've had a spate of burglaries, and in particular we had the event at the Pier Park with shots being fired in the air in the middle of the day. And I recognise just how concerned the public are about that. The first responsibility I have in that area has been to support the police in their work. As you will know, persons were quickly arrested and charged following the Pier Park robbery, and I'm pleased we've had a number of arrests in the last few days in relation to the burglaries that have taken place. And my job has been to support the police in being as effective as they can. And that's why the British government has contributed $2 million in terms of police training, in terms of police body cams, in terms of improving the facilities for the police to operate, and also strengthen the marine work of the police by the 4 boats we've supplied to help the police capacity in the water. And that's led to a number of successes. We've had this year to the end of October 1.6 tons of cocaine seized by the police. We've also had increased capture of guns, and those captures help to make tackle crime and increase safety for the community, but there is more to be done. And this is where the Commission of Inquiry recommendations come into play. Firstly, the Commission of Inquiry recommended a wider law enforcement and justice review of all the agencies involved in this area. So the review covers not just the police, but also customs and immigration and the courts, the Director of Public Prosecutions, and to the extent that they're engaged in these issues, also the Office of the Attorney General. The review has been carried out by a group of experts. Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services. And they are actually in the territory now as I speak. Real experts in these areas carrying out these reviews, looking at the structures of those agencies of which I've spoken, how they work together, how they are resourced, how they can better carry out their functions, how they can have better joined up operations to improve the justice system, improve law enforcement, and specifically in terms of the police, whether they have the necessary facilities and resources and powers to be effective in crime prevention, crime detection, and making arrests. So that law enforcement review will be producing a report in March. I hope and have confidence it will be comprehensive in its nature and can help to set the way forward for law enforcement in the territory for the next 10 years and beyond. Because what I want is for the BVI to be best practice in this area.
Yes.
We don't want the BVI to go the way that some other places, frankly, have gone in terms of breakdowns in this area. We want to tackle these issues, grip these issues, and have the right structures in place for the future. So it's immediate action now in terms of my support for the police, and it's about looking more widely at the way law enforcement agencies work together to ensure greater effectiveness for the future. One of the things which I've said before, I'm going to say again today, that I do want to see more immediately is the Police Act brought back to the House of Assembly. The Police Act, the current police regulations and legislation hasn't kept pace with modern crime, hasn't kept pace with modern techniques that criminals use. And so we need an updated Police Act in line with best standards. Best standards in this region, best standards in Europe, best standards in North America to tackle these issues. And so I continue to encourage that Act to come back to the House of Assembly for consideration, precisely to address those concerns of the public and to give the police the powers, the modern powers they require to help to protect and keep us all safe.
The law enforcement review is looking perhaps at what may have taken place in recent years with a view to making sure that things are tightened up and the mistakes of the past are not made anymore, etc. Is there any consideration being given to get assistance, let's say, from the UK? I'm not sure if this has been done. We have a couple of unsolved crimes, unsolved murders here in the BVI. Any word on that?
Indeed. So there have been a number of officers sent out from the UK to the police to help them in their criminal investigations and work. There's also assistance regionally, for example, on ballistics, through the ballistics centre based in Cayman, which the BVI can plug into and get support there. And expert advice and assistance is available from the UK as required. And as I just mentioned, the financial assistance has gone in there to help the police in terms of their training, in terms of their equipment, in terms of their marine capacity. And the wider review, the wider law enforcement review, of which I spoke, is being fully funded by the UK. So that's $1 million worth of funding to support this law enforcement review. So there's substantial financial as well as expert support coming in to assist the police in these areas.
Okay, the law enforcement review, does it entail looking into the Attorney General's chambers, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, maybe the Financial Investigation Agency?
Sure. So it's comprehensive. It's looking at all those bodies which you mentioned, the police themselves, plus customs and immigration. And I'm pleased to say there's been excellent cooperation from the agencies in these areas. The DPP's office, for example, is independent, not subject to my instruction, but she and the other agencies recognise that this review is designed to support and assist. It will make recommendations. I hope those recommendations will be implemented and taken forward. But there's been really good buy-in from all of those involved, working with the experts, and of course, feeding to the experts their views on how things can improve. So it needs to be a two-way process, with the experts giving expert assistance and making recommendations, but also those on the ground here who have the local expertise in this area, explaining how it works, explaining what can be done better, explaining where more resources are required, explaining where more powers might be required. So it's a two-way process. But I mean, they're now on their second major visit in this area, taking through that work. And indeed, I met a couple of the experts just earlier this morning on their engagement, and indeed they had a meeting with the Financial Investigation Agency very recently, which the Deputy Governor may be able to address. But yeah, really engaging with the local agencies here to learn from them, and then make recommendations on how things can be made better for the future.
Deputy Governor, please feel free if there's anything you'd like to add along the way.
Well, in particular, probably following on my recent message about the impact of crime in the community, I would like to be able to tell the public that the collective we, that means everyone who reside in the territory, it's all of our business. And we do not get to be selective when crime is not our business, because it impacts every one of us. And the reason why I hope that, along with the governor, we've taken the lead on security and speaking about crime, and myself following that we'll have other community leaders do so, it's going to take a collective effort. It's very easy to say it's the governor's responsibility. But the truth of the matter is, before the police will know, the community will know. And not being afraid has to be our number one priority. We also have to be able to recognize that although it might appear to be a small crime, with the potential of a small crime, it has the root to become greater and impact not just our regular lives, but the overall economy of the Virgin Islands. I think that's my message, which I want to continue, because the fabric of the society is built on security, is built on safety, is also built on feeling protected.
Yeah.
And while the agencies, the government agencies, along with the police, they have their mandate and their responsibility. And yes, the review that the governor spoke about will identify where we can improve. Will set the BVI on the right path for law and order for a very long time. It is only as good as the people and their buy-in and their ability to support those agencies.
I don't know how much we can even go on to underscore the importance of letting everybody know that crime is our business. Everything that goes on in this territory is our business. Yes, the governor has his responsibility, the DG, you have yours, the premier does, but we cannot be bystanders. And so I appreciate that. And, if there's anything else you'd like to say on that, Governor.
But first of all, I wholeheartedly agree
Yes.
with what the Deputy Governor has said in this area. And, it's particularly important that we act early to help dissuade and protect young people who may be misled and get involved in ways which can lead to harm to them as well as to the community. The drugs trade
Yes.
is a real problem and danger to the safety of this community. Drugs are transshipped through this territory with the support and assistance of organisation of people in this territory. And young people get dragged into this, and it's deeply corrosive of them and deeply harming to the reputation of the BVI. So we need together to act in that area. And I accept my responsibilities. I've spoken about the successes the police have had in this area, but there's much more to be done. And the message is, if you see it, say it.
Yes.
People in the community, when a murder occurs,
Somebody
They know.
knows. Somebody knows.
and the responsibility is to support and act and report. And let me just, if I may, remind you of the confidential hotline
Yes.
numbers for the police. I wrote them down just in preparation for coming here. There are two numbers: 800-477 and 368-9339. Let me repeat those: 800-477 or 368-9339. So if you see it, say it, and please report it, and help us all to tackle these issues. It's not easy, but if we can get the support of the community, it can help us all to make it safer for everybody, our elderly, our young people, those in vulnerable groups.
I'm glad you touched on drugs, because that was going to be my next question. I mean, we touched on unsolved murders earlier on, but is there anything that is specifically being done in the meantime? I know the law enforcement review is underway, etc., but is there anything specific that's being done to enhance safety and security at the prison, for example? Border security. We know that we have a lot of wide open borders here in the BVI, and I'm not sure how quickly we can forget about that plane that landed on Anegada with drugs. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like unheard of for the BVI.
All of the areas you touched on need to be addressed and are being addressed. So we need to increase our security at the seaports and at the airports.
Yes.
And those will be included within the issues which the law enforcement team will address. This is a problem across the Caribbean. There's a CARICOM report which came out just the other day, which highlights the vulnerability of porous borders within the region. And so an MOU was agreed a little while ago between the police and customs and immigration to increase the police's role in helping to ensure security at our ports. But we've got to keep on working at it. We also need to improve our equipment. For example, getting effective scanning of cargoes coming into the territory so we can check that there aren't guns or drugs hidden within them. On the prison, we have challenges in terms of, first of all, the murder which occurred in 2021, not that long after I came here exposed some of the security challenges at the prison, some of the vulnerabilities at the prison. And we have a very busy and overcrowded prison. So what have we done and what are we doing?
Yeah.
Well, the first thing we've done is to increase security equipment at the prison in terms of metal detectors, in terms of gate locks and other specific security equipment, in terms of searching of food and other things which come into the prison for prisoners. We've also improved facilities for prisoners themselves in terms of the UK funding new mattresses, new sheets for the prisoners, because when you have disgruntled prisoners you can have problems and challenges at the prison. And we've also increased training at the prison. That is happening again today as I speak. Training and mentoring going on, being led by the new prison superintendent, Mr. Jay Kendall, who's a very experienced prison superintendent, and how I know is working, hand in hand with his team to try and improve things at the prison. So on both of those areas of border security and prisons, we need to improve, and there are active steps being taken right now as I speak to achieve those improvements in that area. This is also linked, and the last point I'll make on this is linked to the courts, because we need to speed up cases moving through the courts to reduce the number of prisoners on remand and ensure that cases are dealt with as expeditiously as possible for the benefit both of accused persons themselves and for the benefit of the prosecutorial system. So there's work to be done in that area, and active work is taking place, for example, to update the criminal procedure rules to allow for better case management and speedier case management through the courts.
Okay, yes, the criminal procedure rules. And while you touch on it, we can jump there and then go back. I don't know if the DG would have anything to say on that. If you could just explain to the public, what are these criminal procedure rules? And there's also the Jury Act and some other things that would have been mentioned in the Commission of Inquiry report. Why is the ordinary citizen supposed to care about these rules and acts and pieces of legislation? What can they do to help to enhance safety and security in the Virgin Islands? Oh, don't all speak at the same time. Come on.
Okay, well, I'll start. But the DG, I know, can contribute effectively in this area as well. Criminal procedure rules, updated, will continue to ensure that the rights of those accused of crimes are protected. It will help to ensure that both the DPP's office and defence lawyers and the courts can help to move cases through the courts in an expeditious fashion. Just last month, Minister Mike Freer from the UK Ministry of Justice was here on the territory, precisely engaging on these issues with judges and others, talking about how an effective case management system can help to prevent delays in the court process, help to ensure that cases come to trial more quickly and then are dealt with properly and fairly through the jury system. Because at the moment the system is too slow, to the frustration of all involved. Our rules are out of date, not in line with best modern practice, and so the criminal procedures rules are being developed to address that problem. In relation to the jury legislation, one issue which has been a problem is that we're a small territory with a small population. Everybody knows each other, and therefore impaneling a jury where you don't have people, which you must avoid, who are closely related or close friends, who those may be in the dock, is necessary. And so the changes which were made to the Jury Act were to increase the pool of jurors, including by having those with residency certificates, long-term residency certificates, being able to also join juries to increase that pool to help to address that particular challenge. And what's that about is not just a set of rules, it's about delivering justice.
Yes.
And if we can deliver justice, that will better meet the needs of the people in the BVI and help to better ensure the safety and security of people in the BVI. So again, that's what the Commission of Inquiry is about. It's not about, simply finding out what's gone wrong. It's about finding solutions for the future.
Excellent. Deputy Governor, anything? I know that there is a draft or was a draft of the criminal procedure rules, for example, that has been submitted to you. Where are we with that?
So that draft right now is going through its consultation phase with the relevant stakeholders. And persons need to understand that the court is for everyone, not just for persons who do bad things, but in particular in terms of the criminal procedure rules, even criminals need to understand what are their rights, what are the structures, what should take place, because the institution that's designed to uphold justice and law and order has to have within it justice and law and order. So these rules are rather critical. It will allow persons to see the consistency of how cases should be applied. You'll be able to have a structure which enables certain cases to move at a rapid rate, of course, ensuring better justice and faster justice. And as the governor mentioned, to link back to Jury Act, the need to have a wider pool of jurors is very, very critical, especially in a smaller territory, to allow justice to take place in a more rapid way. And with the changes in Jury Act, that affords that. And persons there have a better chance of having a fair trial with a wider pool being committed.
Excellent. Now, is there a time frame or timeline for the criminal procedure rules to be completed and implemented? What about the Jury Act, I think, was brought into force? There was a supporting act for the Jury Act that was brought into force just this December 1st, I think.
That's right. The Jury Act has been brought into force. There are actually two pieces of legislation in this area, and the new regulations flowing from that act are actually on my desk as I speak, waiting for my signature, which I'll be signing later today.
Okay.
So the Jury Act, we made very good progress in there. On the criminal procedure rules, as the Deputy Governor has said, we are going through consultation at the moment, but I believe we are at an advanced stage in that consultation. So I hope very much that those criminal procedure rules can be brought to Cabinet as necessary and approved at an early date.
You mentioned that there are some delays, or we're probably not moving as fast as we should as far as the implementation of the recommendations are concerned. What seems to be the problem or the delay here?
Some of the recommendations are difficult.
Okay.
And the deadlines were tight, and as I've said before, in relation to the law enforcement review, and indeed the vetting review, which we haven't touched on yet, it's taken time for me to get those underway, but we're now on track in terms of delivery. So I recognise that some of the recommendations haven't been easy, but I'll also be frank and say I think there is need for greater prioritisation in this area by all those responsible. And so in my work with the Premier and elected government, I continue to stress the need for the work in this area to be prioritised to ensure effective delivery for people in the BVI.
Okay. The issue of vetting you mentioned earlier on, just now, can we go into that then and explain what that process involves and how the public is involved, should be involved, or what they should know about that?
Sure. So this review is also taking place at the moment, and indeed the people carrying it out are again here on the territory as I speak. And this is simply to ensure that those who come into responsible and sometimes sensitive work in relation to law enforcement, checking whether they have any past criminal record or whether they have any potential conflicts of interest which could affect the integrity of their work. And so the way that vetting is going to work is currently being planned to help ensure the integrity of all those involved. As you will know, the Police Commissioner has been determined to take action that where any of his police officers have been involved in wrongdoing, that action is taken to suspend them from their work, to have investigations and charges brought as necessary. The vast majority of police officers, just as the vast majority, I'm confident, of officers in other agencies, are good, honest people. But where you have a few people who might be bad apples, that can harm the organisation as a whole. So the vetting review is to introduce systems, just to do those checks on persons, to check they don't have those potential conflicts or any criminal connections, and therefore that we and the public can have confidence in their work.
I want to go back to something that you just said, but first I want to invite the Deputy Governor to just follow along or continue along on this vetting. If we can go back a bit to the review of the law enforcement agencies, how is the Human Resource Department involved in ensuring that this process is fully institutionalized?
Very good question. Well, I think it's around 1:30 today, where we'll meet with the vetting team.
Okay.
And go through the nuances of what it means to satisfy the current recommendation through a COI, but further expand that dialogue for what it means for the wider public service. Therefore, the HR department has to be part of a long-term discussion. Vetting is not something new. We do have forms of vetting right now within the public service, but how do we have a particular focus, especially for law enforcement officers who must, at the onset of entering the institution, come with a certain level of integrity, honesty, and without corruption. Absolutely no excuses in those areas. Not that other areas have excuses, but this is a job that we have to make sure that there are no excuses. Therefore, being part of a vetting process to ensure quality men and women is part of transforming the public service. It's part of ensuring that we have the right capacity and the right individuals doing what's necessary. So HR must be involved, because vetting does not stop at this recommendation. We're not trying to have a short-term fix of quality, but make sure that the institution is built and robust for future quality checks at this level.
And which is why I suppose the government's stance of adopting this modern governance approach, government business at its best, it came about, I suppose, as a result of the Commission of Inquiry, but its continuity is important there. Governor, as a result of the Commission of Inquiry, there are several investigations ongoing into corruption in various law enforcement agencies. Whether they were not properly vetted or not is probably not the issue now. We have had some incidents. Customs, for example. What's the update on these investigations? I know you're going to probably say sub judice and all of these things, but
Well, I am going to say some of that. But you're right. There are a number of criminal investigations launched pursuant to the Commission of Inquiry recommendations, and again, my reports have set those out very clearly. But one of them is in relation to customs. These investigations can be complex, and they take time, and they need to be properly done for the fairness of all concerned. But I'm not going to comment on the detail of investigations which are currently taking place. As you will know, in relation to the school wall project, charges have been brought in relation to that investigation, and trials will be coming up on those. Again, I'm not going to comment on the what may happen at those trials. That's a matter for the courts, not for me. But I am determined that there be proper investigations to ensure that if persons have been engaged in wrongdoing, that they are held accountable. And if they can be held accountable, that's proper in their individual cases, but also better in terms of the lessons learned for the future.
And while there are those cases, yes, there are also cases that I'm aware of where officers themselves have felt that they were wronged. Is there any way that you can talk about some of these? Of course, not specifically, but there's always two sides Or maybe three to a story.
Well, a number of public officers were suspended, have been suspended, either pursuant to the Commission of Inquiry report or pursuant to further investigations. Again, I'm not going to comment on the individual cases, but I am determined to ensure that those matters are properly investigated and that they are investigated in a way which is fair to all concerned. And these are carried out in accordance with the proper rights of the individuals involved. I would never intend otherwise, and I will ensure otherwise. But again, it's correct that if, and I stress the word if, public officers have acted wrongly, that there's proper investigation, working with the Public Service Commission, which is an independent body which makes recommendations ultimately to the governor in these areas, to ensure that these things don't happen for the future.
And we understand investigations, and it takes a while to do proper investigations, but in the meantime there are people whose lives are being affected and that sort of thing. I don't know if, Deputy Governor, if you can speak to, what happens in the interim. I don't know.
Being part of a dynamic institution and helping and supporting persons is your priority. And sometimes helping and supporting an institution comes with tough decisions and tough outcomes. Public officers are supported. They are afforded the opportunity for natural and fair justice, whether it's a disciplinary matter through the commissions or sometimes, as we have seen recently, through the courts. We maintain the idea that they are innocent until proven guilty. We protect their employment status during that process. We recognize that they might be impacted as they go through this process, and that's the reason why the very courts are for everyone. And we have to make sure things such as the speedy trial and things of that aspect is afforded so that we can get on with the business of the public service. But it's not something that anyone, especially deputy governor, will take pride with, because you want to see every one of your public officer in good standing, working extremely well, and contributing. Where we do ensure accountability is where it's necessary. Yeah. Because that's part of a growing institution. That's part of government at its best. That's part of the future of the public service being accountable. And lessons, unfortunately, are learned two ways: through good examples and also not through great examples. We want to minimize the number of bad examples, hold people accountable, support them. And where the process, where we can influence the process to ensure that their chance of justice happens quickly, then we will do so. And if throughout the process and the end result is they are found innocent, whoever it might be, then we support them, we bring them back, and we support them in terms of the next level of their career growth.
Right. If we can go back a little now to the police force, the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, and obviously there's been an uptick in crime. Governor, from where you sit, do you think that the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force is equipped, facilities-wise, equipment-wise, manpower-wise, to deal with this level of crime that we're experiencing in the territory? And what is being done in the meantime? Yes, there's this law enforcement review being undertaken, but that's going to take a while, and then recommendations and implementation and all of that. But in the meantime, there are these burglaries, there are murders, there are, all of these criminal activity. What's being done in the meantime?
Okay. What's being done, the police commissioner himself outlined at a press conference not so long ago, is, first of all, increased patrolling by the police. Secondly, the remanning on a full-day basis of the police stations in the East End and the West End of the territory, and continuing the community policing initiative with police officers actually operating out in the community to help to know the community and promote that cooperation of which I spoke between the community and the police. As I said, arrests have been made and charges brought. So after the Pure Park robbery, that happened very quickly, within a week. After that very frightening incident, persons were apprehended and have been charged in relation to the Pure Park robbery. As I said, just in the last few days, a number of persons have been arrested in relation to the recent spate of burglaries. And we've had record drug seizures and record gun captures as well. So the police are doing a lot. But in terms of whether the police have enough in terms of facilities and manpower, I would say there's more to be done. In terms of equipping the police, the UK government continues to fund work in that area through the boats which I talked about on the waters, through further training for the Marine unit and further training for police officers on the ground as well. But we also need, whilst always protecting human rights, and I am determined to ensure that the police will always act in line with human rights standards, we need to update the Police Act. The police need the necessary powers to deal with the technology and challenges which face our modern community. And therefore I continue to urge, if people rightly say we want the police to be able to do more in this area, then we should support bringing the police back into the House of Assembly and getting it passed. The legislation is outdated. We have updated in one particular area, which is on DNA evidence, but the other aspects of the Police Act have not been passed and sit there and need to come back into the House of Assembly to be addressed. And then lastly, to go back again, the police cannot do it alone.
Right.
It's no use just saying it's for the police. The police have their responsibilities, and I have my responsibilities, which I fully accept, but we also need the wider community to work with the police to help them to tackle crime in the community.
Are we past the stage of just being a talk shop governor? I mean, for the want of a better word, that's a bit colloquial, but we always come and we say this should happen, that should happen, we're doing this, we're doing that, but what does it take for the community to understand? What does it take for the government, the governor's office, to understand that there needs to be more done?
Well, in terms of my areas of responsibility, I am doing things.
Okay.
I am delivering that financial training and physical support for the police to make them more effective in the areas which I've spoken. The Police Act legislation is for the House of Assembly. I do not have legislative powers, and so it's for the House of Assembly to act in that area. And in terms of community support, I need others to speak up. Church leaders, community leaders, the Christian Council, helping us to encourage the community to work with the police. So, there are things to be done. I'm doing them in my area. There's always more to be done, but I need others to also act in this area to help the police to be more effective in preventing crime.
Deputy Governor, you are the Deputy Governor of the Virgin Islands, but I want to dare ask that you get a little personal. You are a Virgin Islander. Over the years, you have seen how this territory has metamorphosized, and perhaps, and we know that there's a lot of good taking place in the territory, but of course, one bad apple tends to spoil the whole bunch, but we're not going to let it happen. But from a personal perspective, if you can take off the Deputy Governor's hat for a moment and just speak to your fellow Virgin Islanders and residents in terms of how you see this territory has gone bad in a criminal sense, and make an appeal.
Well, I literally do not have on a deputy governor's hat. And that's just a metamorphosis. I do wear a hat, so it's off. But thanks for the opportunity. As a Virgin Islander, being part of the fabric of society where crime was not cool, where crime was limited to persons who found themselves on the bad side of the society. That's not the case any longer. Unfortunately, crime appears to be cool in certain aspects, in particular in the drug trade. There are young men and young women who are aspiring to be the next great drug dealer. But they live in our homes. They go to our churches. They're on the blocks, for lack of a better word, of our communities, and we know who they are. The ability for us to re-tap into the fabric that I grew up in, where we held persons accountable for their actions by saying that is not right, has to come back. And I think I said previously, you don't get to decide which aspect of crime is good, because it all impacts us in some shape or form. You've heard it, Angela. These are just drug dealers shooting themselves until one stray bullet impacts your child. And the time is now. The time is now for us to recognize it is at our doorstep. Persons are fearful. Persons are hopeful that changes will take place. So if I were to give a personal and direct plea to society right now, it has to be that before the police will be aware of crime or criminal activities, it's rather critical that we recognize it for ourselves, speak out, but also be in a position to hold ourselves accountable when we see things going wrong. So that's my viewpoint. That is my perspective. I believe that we can do an excellent job. We've said it, if you see it, say it, and don't wait until it impacts you personally to say something.
Okay. Very well said. As we are about to wrap up, if I can start with His Excellency Governor John Rankin, CMG, if you can just reiterate some of the points that were made in terms of the COI recommendations and the pointers that you made earlier on in terms of enhanced safety and security. What is the governor's office, what is the UK government doing to ensure that this territory of ours remains crime-free relatively?
The Commission of Inquiry recommendations are about making this territory better for the people of the BVI. Better government, better delivery of services, better use of public money, greater transparency. A number of the recommendations fall directly within my area of responsibility, and that includes the recommendations in relation to law enforcement. So what I am doing is, first of all, providing that immediate practical and material help to the police in their work and supporting the police commissioner, and encouraging members of the community to also support the police in that respect. But the wider law enforcement review under the Commission of Inquiry is going to take a holistic look at all our law enforcement agencies, police, customs and immigration, the work of the DPP with the courts and the Attorney General's office, to ensure that we have a law enforcement system in place going forward which is fit for the 21st century, and I hope can make us a model of best practice in law enforcement. So as well as those immediate steps to tackle the challenges, which I fully recognise, we need a wider reform of the system to make things more robust for the future and to help to make the BVI a safer place, not just for the current generation, but for future generations and for the young people who we need to support, help them to be good citizens within the territory and help them to play their part also in making the BVI a place safe for everybody. That's what I'm determined to do, and that's what I will remain committed to do throughout my remaining period as governor, and I know my successor will be equally committed in that area.
And bearing in mind the hefty job that is, and the May 2024 deadline, do we see any shifts in the deadline? I mean, I know you're leaving, but of course your successor would continue what you've been doing, right?
I'll be producing my next quarterly report later this month, and that will include a review of where we are in terms of COI implementation and the challenges ahead for the future. So watch this space. But I am concerned that we need to further prioritise work in this area if we're going to get the COI recommendations implemented in the way that everybody would wish.
His Excellency said, watch this space. Deputy Governor, final words from you, if you can recap some of the things that you spoke about, and just final words as we wrap up.
Thank you very much. I think, first of all, the BVI has always been a place where we've aspired towards greatness. You see that in the financial services. You see that also in the tourism product. And that has to translate through government's business. It has to translate through transforming the public service. So the recommendations out of the COI, they are meant to make us better. And we've already seen changes in those areas. The public saying, well, now we understand. Something as simple as knowing I have a chance to express my interest to be on the board or committee. Those are things. And I have absolutely no doubt that the outcome of the COI, that the BVI and the public service and the government will be in a better place. My responsibility is to ensure that each public officer is equipped not just with resources, but also with the ability to understand what greatness looks like, what good governance looks like, and to be part of a structure with rules and regulations that support them, but also, where possible, ensure that they understand what it takes to deliver great government's business. So the COI is providing an opportunity for us to continue the ambition, the vision, and the greatness that the Virgin Islands have always said and always asked for ourselves.
His Excellency Governor John Rankin, CMG of the Virgin Islands, Deputy Governor of the Virgin Islands, Mr. David D. Archer Jr., thank you both very much. This brings to an end another table talk for this season. Today's focus was on enhanced safety and security as the government of the Virgin Islands adopts this modern governance approach, government business at its best. My name is Angela Burns. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching.